Good evening, YouTubers. Reloading Bench back with you once again. And we are going to do some swapping on the decapping and sizing die. 2 years ago, February of 2020, so almost 3 years now, 2 3/4, 2 10/12, 3/4 is probably a better number. I decided when I was putting this press together, that you may recall from way back when video, as I take a seat, that this was, I decided to go RCBS. I love my lockout die, and maybe because that was RCBS, and obviously this is Hornady, and this is the new bullet feeding die that actually works now. And then I have RCBS cedar crimper, which suffices, but I still do a separate crimp with the Lee factory crimp because Dillon 7 series doesn't offer more than 5 stations, and the way I have this configured, I would need more than 5. So 6 at a minimum because of my powder check, and I would never run without a powder check. So in any case, back to the situation at hand. For those not familiar, I've had issues with the decapping pin either breaking, and part of that has to do with the RCBS sizing recapping die is too short. It just is too short. This barely, in fact, this doesn't even touch the shell plate. And the reason it doesn't touch the shell plate is because it is just so short, in combination with the fact that I don't have enough threads to lock the die. So I don't have enough threads on here. See, I'm at the end. I'm at the end. In fact, we will be taking this off. I don't have, and somebody told me that Lee has now changed this from a Phillips to a hex. Thank goodness. What a stupid decision that was to put a Phillips in there, because all it does is F up your anno. In any case, as I unwind this down the long winding path, I probably should have taken out let me take out that O-ring first to make it a little bit easier, a little friendlier. So in any case, I've done probably a few thousand rounds on this press. No major complaints, but what I found happening, especially after I broke the pin, and it had been happening before, I was just tolerating it, roughly 10%. So if I did a 100 or 200 quick run, 10 to 20 bullets, and this is not a real bullet, I just put this in together to show you, when I went to inspect them, I'm like, WTF, why do I have a primer strike? And the reason I have a primer strike is because regardless of what, like right now I have the Pow'r Punch, you can see that move, the Pow'r Punch decapping pin in here. And if you also recall, that spring gets so compressed that it's, worthless. So I think I ordered some more on Amazon to try a different spring, because the ones that RCBS sent me, which I'm grateful for, really compressed almost immediately, to the point of the same as what the spring was in there, the damaged spring that was in there. So it was essentially useless. So this is not working out well for me. So let me just unscrew this, instead of trying to take the O-ring out like it would be so easy with these. So because I couldn't get this in, I was even trying to put a lock ring on the bottom, but because of the size and the mount in the Dillon press for the tool head, you can't really put a lock ring on the bottom like you can with other presses. So I'm sure somebody's going to say, why didn't you just get a Dillon set of dies? And part of it is because, to me, a die is a die, and this is probably the example where maybe that's not the case. And I didn't feel like spending, I think at the 125 plus tax plus shipping, $150 on dies when I get them for 50 bucks. And again, I've never had issues. So now we're going to find out if my idea might work, because I've swapped the pin out to multiple pins, multiple decapping pin, decapping rod, the Pow'r Punch, the static one, and I'm having the same problem. And this is the problem I get. So what happens is when, and this is a known issue with progressive presses, that when the pin punches the primer, you know, some people will say, oh, you need to sand this this decapping pin so that it's not so thick, so when it hits the primer it doesn't suck it back in. So what's happening is it pushes it out, and then it, because it doesn't, because it grabs a little bit of tension, it pulls it right back in. So you have this condition. So when you go to prime, you're essentially just using a new primer to push the old primer in, which then gives you a bullet that looks like that, a finished bullet and everything, but a bad primer. So that's, you know, not a good thing at the range. So I just got tired of it, and I was trying to be more cognizant of it, and I was doing better, but it's just irritating because now you're doubting your decapping if you're not watching the decap tube that I have to see a primer or listen for the primer, and it's a feel thing when you're raising the RAM and you feel something like, yeah, that's not a new primer that's set, that just didn't feel right. So I was catching them as much as possible, and my 10% probably down to 1 to 2%, but still effing irritating. So then I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to take the plunge. I'm going to, and see the difference in that probably will provide me all the difference I need. I told myself, just get the effing Dillon decap, sizing and decap. Try and find that. I went on Dillon's website. So first of all, everybody's out. All the vendors are out. And if you look on Dillon's website, there's a 42-week plus back order for die sets, and specifically 9mm if I was going to buy the set. I'm not sure if Dillon, I think they do sell the individual die, but I mean, if the set is 42 weeks back order, then maybe this is rather extensively back ordered as well. So I went into my old standard, which people say that's junk because it's Lee and it's so low price it cannot be good. So funny story, I have never ever had an issue with loading 9mm. I don't get this condition on my Lee Classic turret with my 4 Lee dies. Never ever had this condition. Only get it on my progressive press. So I thought, you know, since these dies are too short, or let me rephrase that, this tool head is so thick that this standard die just isn't cutting it for me. So I thought, yep, let me switch over to the Lee and see if I can get a better fit in my press so that this actually touches the shell plate and we get a primer to punch out instead of sucking back in. So I'm going to set this back up. Leave it about maybe there. I'm gonna put that back in the press. Ooh, look at that. Got to make sure that yeah, this fucking powder drop is so poorly designed with this stupid charging bar bullshit, safety charging bar bullshit that I don't use and I should probably just take off. Yeah, that's going to be a problemo. Let's see. If we're all the way down, potentially we clear it. Yeah, maybe it's time for this MFer to finally come off. It adds 0 value. So, for what I do. 0 value. And I've been running... Oh no, I can't take it off because of the actuation here. Son of Beach. Son of Beach. Okay, so we're going to put it back together and see what we get. So maybe I do something cuter with my little zip tie. And that looks like it might clear. All right, we'll put it back together and see what we get. Back in a few. All right, I think we've got Lee for the win. So I'll take the camera off the tripod in a second and I've run this through a handful of brass. Of course, now that it's on camera, it'll probably fail, but felt good. So I've got a piece of brass in there right now, and I don't think you'll be able to see how close the die is to the plate. Again, let's see, we're talking right there. I can see that's right at the top of the camera can barely see that. So let me move that up a little bit. And of course, the garage floor being the magnet it is. All right, so I don't know if you can see that, but we're talking extreme negligible, almost touching. So I have enough meat. Camera up again. I have enough meat on, in terms of threads on this die, so that it is in there and it is tight and it is solid. So now that we're going to feed this in, I saw my primer drop, I heard it drop, and it felt great. I took measurements, and all is wonderful. And of course, let's see, make sure that's not a 380, because sometimes those sneak in. That feels good. It's the simple things in life. So for 2 years, off and on, probably a couple thousand, yeah, maybe between 2,000 and 3,000 rounds. Hopefully no longer an issue. So we shouldn't be seeing the proud primer, the reseating primer. And again, you know, maybe I could have sanded the pin a little bit. And based on comments I've been reading online and my own experience, the Pow'r Punch works great for 100, 200, and then that spring compresses, so it actually shrinks the, well, not shrinks, but it decreases the length of the pin, because the pin no longer has that pop capability. So it will punch the primer. Well, it won't punch the primer, it'll push the primer, but it won't punch. It doesn't snap back. Maybe it helps if I had it in camera. But so right now there's a new spring in there, and even with the new spring, it's I wish this die body was longer, that's all, but it isn't. So that's that. And I don't know if die bodies are universal to put the, maybe, to put the Pow'r Punch into the Lee, but I'm not going to worry about it, because we have a Lee solution to a problem that I've had for a long time with reasonable decapping. And again, it just bothered me more as of late, simply because I was doing a lot more 9. See what I mean about shit not performing on the video? Get up in there. So priming works, seating maybe not, or at least pushing brass. Let's try one last. Yep. All right. So I think we've solved that. So the fine-tuning on the Dillon, the 2-year checkup, was replacing the decap resize die with a longer body. And I'm going to guess that the Dillon had a longer body, but I can't find anything. And I was watching an eBay auction, and the auction, I've seen stuff on eBay for $250. I think the highest I saw for a 9mm three die set, carbide set, was $389 plus shipping plus tax. You're looking at $450. I barely paid that for the press, so that's a no-go. Looking at other brands as well. I was going to pick up a, what is it, CH4D, C4HD. Can't ever remember the order of their letters. And that was like $90 plus tax plus shipping. So Lee to the rescue again. So I'm a Lee fan. Don't have anything bad to say about Lee. And Lee solved my, hopefully, let me do it right-handed this time. Bingo. So we are good. Again, the little things in life that make a difference. So it's a decent press. I don't have major complaints. That whole safety bar thing was never that wonderful. But aside from that, I've worked through my issues, and I was thinking about doing yet a current state video between the Hornady and the Dillon, in terms of how I have them both configured, because I think I did a video a couple of years ago, and things have changed since then in terms of what I'm running and how I'm running it. So maybe somebody could find some value. That is it for tonight. Later. Forgot to mention, as I was putting things away, according to the RCBS documentation, this pin should be 0.4 inches, which I don't know if you can see my calipers. Are set to 0.4 inches, and that is right at 0.4 inches. So I had tried to compensate for that as well by making this much longer, because the die would not, the base of the die would not touch the base of the shell plate. So one of the things I was thinking was that, oh, maybe this isn't, since it's not touching the shell plate, it's not going deep enough into the actual 9mm casing to punch out that primer. So I had that puppy as long as, I want to say, 1.5 centimeters, which in American numbers, 1.5 centimeters is approximately 6.610. So I had this thing as far out as that, and again, still getting, I thought that was just amazing that far out I was still getting the sucked in primer. And maybe that's because this primer pin is too thick and needed to be sanded down for 9mm. But again, this die is meant for 9mm, but again, who knows? Whatever. So the Lee has taken care of it. It's a non-issue, but I thought I would bring that up because somebody will say, oh, just make the pin longer to adjust for the fact that the base of the die does not hit the shell plate. And been there, done that. I've adjusted, and I did this with both the what's called the short primer punch, the one that doesn't have the power or the spring, and I did it with the spring one. And quite frankly, the spring one is just kind of loosey-goosey. So I think, for my needs, that's a no-go. So that's that. Later.